As a reminder, this is not financial advice or recommendations on any stocks. This is for entertainment and educational purposes only. Good morning and happy Sunday, and congrats to the LA Dodgers for winning the World Series. I'm not much of a baseball guy, but that was a really fun series to watch. I'm not gonna lie. So, this is a follow up from last week's video. Again, I don't know if I'm gonna make these a weekly thing. You have to let me know because I don't wanna clog up the channel with things you don't wanna watch. Okay, so jumping right in, here are the plays I got triggered into this past week. Now, a couple things to point out here. If you notice, the Thinkorswim is a paper trading account. Now, if you haven't been following along, I no longer can execute trades on Schwab. So I do all of my executions on E-Trade. That's the only thing I use E-Trade for, to execute all of my trades. And I still use Toss for their charts, options chains, risk graphs, all of that. So what I did here was I made a paper trading account because here I'm able to adjust positions, their trade price, the quantity of shares, so I can mimic the trades I got triggered into from E-Trade so that I can manage them here. But before I do any management and go over the trades, first thing I want to do is go over the market. So last week we got the recovery, made new highs, all-time highs, and was a bullish picture going forward across the board. And we got follow through. So what I was kind of looking for in the market was some sort of extension before I can figure out some sort of top. So I got that this week, and I'm getting some sort of correction, a pullback basically, because stocks can correct either through two ways, either through price or through time. Through price, meaning price moves up and corrects on a pullback, adjusting the price before continuing higher. And then time by a base. So I'm getting that on the Qs, the SPY as well. Got a little bit away from the 20 and now getting a pullback. Now, here's the issue. The IWM has been kind of behind. Now, they were the first ones to recover post-tariff sell-off and make new highs, but now struggling, kind of double topped, now doing a buy setup on the daily. So here's kind of what I'm going to be looking for this week. So on the Qs, if I look at the hourly, really just need to look at the prior hourly bars high. It will retake the 20 on the hourly, and then maybe holds up and continue its bullishness. Of course, there's resistance above, but maybe continues and holds up. Here's the SPY, same thing. Just the previous hourly bars high. And if the previous hourly bars low gets taken out, then of course the Qs and the IWM pullback will continue, is what I'm expecting. Now, IWM is also still into a declining 20, but again, same thing. Over the hourly bars high, will retake that 20 and trigger the buy setup on the daily, and then maybe moves up. So what I think I want to see in the market this week, because I felt like last week there was some divergence with the IWM selling off, with the Qs moving up, that there caused them a lot of choppiness, especially in the swing trading. So what I think this week, what I would like to see is either A, the IWM buy setup to trigger, and then the Qs and the SPY previous hourly bars gets taken out, recovers, and then continues the uptrend, or the Qs and the SPY sells off and continues the correction into the daily 20, and then the IWM here sells setup on the hourly, triggers, and then stays weak. So what I want to see in the market always is to move together as a whole, because when there's divergence, it creates a lot of choppiness for day trading, swing trading, all of that. Now, if I take a quick peek at the sector, so communication sector failing to hold up, back under the 20 now. The energy sector had the breakout failure and then recovered, now holding up on the 20. The 200 weekly still intact, financials struggling, retesting the past week's low. And then the XLI, which last week looked really good for a breakout, peeked its head out and now kind of not following through. So what I always want to see is follow through on the initial move. But I don't know, this was kind of a little peek out. I wouldn't say that's a proper breakout. Not too sure, but holding up, breakout, no follow through so far. And then XLK, technology, same thing as the Qs is what I'm expecting or looking for. And then XLP, consumer staples, had the little sandwich last week and then eventually sold off back under the 20 week, but into the 200 on the weekly. So may get some sort of bounce this week. And then real estate last week looked higher. So this is kind of the picture. So if I erase these bars here, so that's kind of the picture I had last week. And I thought, man, real estate looks higher heading into the end of the year, but never broke out. So it decided to come back in. Of course, FOMC and the rate cuts happened this past week also, and dropped back down into the basis low. So it's been on this sort of chop. It's still into that 200 on the weekly, into a rising 20 on the hour monthly. There is a real estate stock that I do like for this week that held up pretty well during the sell-off. So I'll get to that. XLU also topped, was looking for a top and now doing a lower high. So now it's under the 20. Now it looks lower to 87 or so on the utility sector. And then healthcare had the breakout, now pulling in, kind of a deep pullback or back under the 20, but little buy setup there on the daily, sloppy. And then the XLY, consumer discretionary, gap down and then back up over the 20. Yeah, bullish picture all around, but of course into a lot of resistance. All right, so now let's go over the trades I got triggered into this past week. So FSK, this was kind of a transition into that uptrend, possibly after the breakdown and no follow through. Maybe gets a bounce on the weekly and then reversal bar on the monthly. So I did get triggered in on that day and then right away no follow through. So now it's doing like a buy setup on the daily there. So I may raise my stop up, especially since it has earnings coming up this week. So I don't know if I want to hold into that. So that is on the 6th. So I'll raise my stop and then just kind of game time decision if I want to hold into earnings. LNTH, that is up a little under $1,000 there. Same thing as kind of like the FSK, transitioning out of the downtrend. So holding up, raising my stop to that green bar's low. So this also has earnings coming up. So again, I don't know if I want to hold these into earnings. What day does this report? On the 6th, same day. So that will be kind of game time decision there. But for sure, raising my stop. And then the man, this was a base breakdown. This was the one bearish trade took, or the short position. So that got triggered in. And now getting a reversal bar. I'm going to wait and see what the market does. If the market turns bullish all out across the board, I will definitely take some over that bar's high, like half, not the whole thing, and then manage the back half a little bit more loosely. But if the market stays bearish, then I will kind of manage the whole thing a bit more loosely. And then NMRA, this was the 1, 2, 3 I saw last week, but never triggered. And then it had a gap up on Thursday, I believe, was day trading it and then got into it as a swing, jumped in 5,000 shares, and that was up a good amount on Friday. And then now it kind of closed as a doji bar, so that's up a little bit. And by the way, I'm risking $1,000 to $2,000 per trade on these swing trades. And the only thing I did a full size here, everything is $1,000, is that TLS, which is down a bit here. So let me show you. So yeah, well, to finish off the NMRA, so this one also has earnings coming up, it looks like, on the 6th. They're all reporting on the 6th. So I really like that weekly there. But I don't know, again, like these little stocks, I don't know if I want to hold them into earnings. I may keep a piece, but I think for now I may go daily bar by bar heading into earnings. Now TLS, so this one, hindsight, it looks like it is kind of like a rounding top. Of course, really sloppy movement on that base. So this is what happened. So I was looking for that 1, 2, 3 kind of play there, but I didn't use this low as a stop. I used the really big stop because of the whippiness I saw on that daily base. But it triggered me in just by a couple cents there. Not much volume on that little break. So I was going to trail it to that bar's low, that resting bar's low, but I thought that was going to be too tight, judging by kind of the whippiness that how this stock looks like it trades. So I didn't want to just get tagged out just like how I got tagged in and then it goes. So I decided, okay, I'm just going to let it go. I'm going to sit on it and wait for a pullback. So I got that little green bar there on that day. And then if it pushed higher, I was going to raise my stop, but never got it. And now it's kind of approaching my stop here. So it's down almost an R. Well, 1,500, like 3/4 of an R. I'll just leave my stop where it is. There's no point in me raising my stop to beat a couple cents there, and just let it play out. The monthly 123 is what I was kind of banking on there. That looked really nice. We'll see. So I'll just hopefully that doesn't get stopped out. And then the XCRS. This was the base breakout on the daily, and then ended up finally triggering on this day. So what is that, Wednesday? Yeah. So I had my order out since Monday. Looks like this has earnings coming up too. Everything's reporting on the 6th. So I'll see kind of how these look and see if I want to hold them into earnings. So that's the trades I got into this week. All right, now in terms of this week's scanning, here's what I'm watching. So Val, this was from the carryover. This had the 1, 2, 3 and never broke out. So tomorrow would trigger, if it does take out that base, it'll trigger like a 1, 2, 3 there and break out of that 200. We'll see. Energy. NGL also kind of basing for a breakout higher. Weekly buy setup that's triggered. Maybe gets continuation. Bit sloppy, but bullish. Looks higher. Lin is down a lot and into a lot of support on the weekly and monthly. This pays dividends, so I'm thinking to maybe sell some puts on it. It did report, so the premiums might not be there. Bring in a little cash flow heading into this week because I feel like it could get some sort of bounce. We'll see. AER had the 1, 2, 3. This was from the gaps list. So it has a 1, 2, 3 on the daily, 1, 2, 3, 4 for tomorrow, and bullish picture across the board. And looks higher. Earnings out of the way. LTM, weekly buy setup on a secondary entry. So this base little breakout here. Now the thing with LTM looks like, this was also on the carryover list. So this was from the previous week as well. And continuing that base. But this one looks like it's going to be reporting also. Oh, that's next week. So it's okay. So yeah, it looks higher over that base. So what is that? So that would be over 45.60. And then the stop being 43.80. So I may get some LTM tomorrow. And then Las Vegas. Who doesn't like Las Vegas? So this one was the 1, 2, 3-ish that I saw last week and then continued to hold its bullishness this week and looks higher just across the board. It's going to be a 1, 2, 3 on the weekly. So the numbers would be over 59.70 by 57.60 or so. B-Fly popped, had earnings. This was from the earnings list and looking like it wants to break out. So I know it looks really sloppy on the daily there, but I think if it can base because it's gapped and popped and sat on top of that on top of that 200 and then now popped and retesting. So I think if the B-Fly can kind of base and then break out on some sort of breakout this week, I'll let that kind of sit and see how it cooks up. Clove, also same thing, kind of gapped up, sat on right on top of that 200, but this one's doing a pullback, so like a little buy setup on the daily. Looks like it's reporting though. And then Wriggle, pretty sloppy. It's like a weekly buy setup that's triggered. PGTX, also daily kind of breakouts, pulled back, basing, retesting this base. So over it does look kind of higher. Probably going to pass. Argent looks really interesting. So this one would be over 664, super high price too. And then stop 637.60. So kind of a big stop. But Argent, earnings out of the way. Let me see if the options chain, not the most liquid, but maybe buy some calls on it. I'll see rather than the shares because it's a really high price stock and it's a big stop. PCVX. So this one looks like a base breakout, kind of into oscillating between the 200 and the 20 there, or starting to. Looks like it has earnings though. It looks higher. MLTX had a big gap down and now holding up. Now that it's getting kind of carried by the 20, probably needs to clear that prior bar's high. Probably going to pass. The BHVN, not much said. I just noticed the rounding bottom across the board there. So I feel like it's going to bottom or trying to bottom. Looks like it has earnings also. I don't know if that's going to translate into a trade, but on the list. Goss from last week. So had the pop. So here's kind of what that picture looked like last week coming into Monday. So I was thinking, okay, let's see if that translates into a trade. Had the second bar, so I was looking at it to over that bar's high right here, and then never triggered. So now it looks even better, I think. So it has that weekly buy setup. Now the 20 MA is starting to kind of curl up again. So over that bar's high, I guess there are some tails in the way. Over 255. I'm probably going to try it Monday. So far, GOS, REGN, and probably the LTM for tomorrow looks okay for me. ALMS, also kind of like that PCVX, kind of oscillating into the 200 between the 20. Looks bullish, holding up okay on the weekly. So that looks pretty interesting. EWTX, this one is very interesting to me. So this one did break out of that 200. Look at that weekly breaking out. It's got one issue into that week or the monthly 20 MA. So that is what? To like $21. So that's kind of going to be my first target probably. So this one I'm trying for sure. Oh, this one's also reporting on the 6th. So this is the one I really wanted to try. So that's over 1885, let's say. And then the stop would be 1780. I'll try it, but it is reporting. And then my first target was going to be 21. And then second target, it really has to like 25 or so. But yeah, earning might be an issue. ARVN, this also looks interesting. This is over 1030 or so. This one also reporting though. Not too sure. Then ILMN, this was from the gaps list. Maybe on a 1, 2, 3, but big igniting bar. So I'm probably going to pass. But I'll see how it kind of bases. And then the EEFT. So we're getting into the financials now. The EEFT, yeah, just down a lot, looking for a bounce maybe. It is kind of retesting a lot of support there. And the 200 on the monthly, getting a reversal bar. Probably not going to do much. I like to see wide range bars. So maybe for a recovery this week, but probably going to pass. Lending Club had the gap up post earnings, now doing a pullback into the rising 20. So buy setup on the daily. And then GDYN reported and got a big pop, maybe on a 1, 2, 3. I think looks kind of interesting. So not for tomorrow, but for Tuesday. If tomorrow gets a resting bar, I think for Tuesday, okay, to play over the Monday's bars high low. So I'll see what that looks like on Tuesday. And then RXT is a buy setup on the daily that broke out of that 200. Looks like it's trying to recover. Popped into that 20, or yeah, the 20 on the monthly. And it looks like it's reporting, probably not going to do anything. Net was also from the earnings list or the gaps list. Maybe on a 1, 2, 3, kind of similar idea as the GDYN, the ILMN. So net, I'll keep an eye on, see what tomorrow's bars look like. NTCT, also same thing. So over Friday's bar, high, low. But it looks like this one's reporting. This one retook, broke out of that 200 and the weekly 200. I guess into more resistance. So not too sure. Calm looks higher, week or the monthly 1, 2, 3. Now the thing is that bar is kind of not clean. Yeah, this would be over, what is that, 18 or so? Stop 1660. But that looks extremely bullish. Looks higher to like, what is that, 24? Somewhere there. This one I might try. And then VTR, post earnings, has a 1, 2, 3 on the daily. Big igniting bar, breaking out of resistance on the weekly, on the monthly. So I may buy some calls on it. VTR. Real estate. So this was the real estate stock that I was talking about. So because real estate got the sell off and this one held up. So that looks interesting. And then EPR is the one that kind of fell off with the real estate sector into support and getting a reversal bar. So I was just kind of looking to see maybe can sell some puts on it. If I do, I'll probably try to do a strike under the 200. So I'll see what the premiums look like. But again, post earnings, so I'm sure the premiums aren't going to be all that exciting. So that's my bullish list, the bearish list, GRMN. From the gaps list, gap down, doing like a base breakdown on the hourly, basically. We'd like to see it base a little bit longer. UPBD broke down, reported, and now doing like a 1, 2, 3, clearing a lot of resist or support there on the weekly, monthly. STM from last week also, I believe. is kind of basing at the support there, staying below the 200. Weekly 123 now. So STM out of the bearish list so far, maybe. But the only thing is, it's an ADR. I don't really like trading the ADRs. ROIV is something I'm looking for as a counter trend play. So if it decides to really run up here this week, then some sort of reversal bar, kind of like that NOK that I discussed, but never got it. And then of course that news came out and just went wild, and then finally that topped. So I'll see kind of how ROIV goes or pushes higher this week. Backs also from the earnings or the gaps list. Reported earnings gap down, doing a 1-2-3 now. It looks lower. Under yesterday's or the Friday's bars low. Stop over Friday's bars high pretty much. Breaking down on the weekly and the monthly. Super weak. And then the FDS, also little 1-2-3 base breakdown. So these 1-2-3s are basically base breakdowns, base breakouts, basically coming from the hourly. So that looks also lower. And then the EAT also reported and then look lower, maybe on a 1-2-3. So because it breached a lot of support there. So I had it on the list, but it looks like it sold off. So not much of a setup, not much of a base, I would say. But it's kind of like the same idea as the FDS. And then the BRSL breakout failed, now transitioning into a downtrend. So if it breaks down under this base, I think can come in. Newer issue, so don't know. I guess also reporting. Probably not going to do anything. Chipotle gap down also. Kind of like the backs on a 1-2-3 base breakdown. Not much of a base on the hourly. Probably going to pass. And then FMC, this was also from the gaps list. This one reported also same thing. So here's that hourly base breakdown. See it much better. Here's the CMG, Chipotle, right? Not much of a base. Whoops. Why is this acting up on me now? FMC, here it is. More of a base. So like the FMC better than the Chipotle, may end up passing. It's a tight stop though. That's the thing. Could be a home run. So that's kind of what I'm watching. And I'll continue to manage the open trades. And yeah, this week has been kind of tough, I would say. A lot of fluctuation in my P&L just because from the choppiness in the market, right? That divergence I was talking about. All right. And then in terms of this week, it looks like, yeah, there's a couple of people reporting some of the semis, AMD, SMCI, and Palantir is reporting this week, Shop, Pfizer. All right. So that's my game plan heading into this week. Again, let me know in the comments if this is something you would like to see on a weekly basis. Again, I'm trying to put out or have something on this channel that has a scheduled video. So there's always content coming up. And then, of course, I'll put out all the other stuff too, the vlogs, the day in the lives, and educationals and motivational stuff, all of that. All right, all that good stuff. But hope you have a great trading week. That's going to do it for me. As always, I appreciate you being here. Hope to see you on the next one. Peace.